This week's episode kicks off with a short but brilliant soundbite from John Mayer, where he lays out the secret to producing incredible sounding music in a home studio. To be fair, he's technically talking about playing guitar, but the principle is powerful, profound, and it applies perfectly to what you and I do in our home studios. Today we're going to dive into how to develop better instincts as a producer. So first, let's check out the clip from John Mayer, then we'll dive in.
What would you play if there wasn't a guitar?
Right.
Right?
Make
I
that
feel like I could
transition,
teach the world to play guitar if I went, just stop for 1 second. Here's your track you would play over. Hum me something. And if you can't hum me something, I don't know
Right.
why you'd be wanting to just, although it's fun to go around and around and around on the guitar,
Right.
but if you want to make it to that next sort of musical level, it becomes hum me, what would you play?
Right.
And then they would go, I don't know. And that's really what the practice is developing that instinct.
I wouldn't call myself a John Mayer super fan. I loved his album Room for Squares. It came out around the time I was just getting into music production, so it holds a special place in my heart. But whether you're a John Mayer fan or not, he just dropped some straight wisdom up on our faces. And so we're going to dive into that today and talk about how what he just said applies to more than just guitar, but to music production in general. But I want to kick things off with a question. Here's the question. What's the goal of learning music production? You are watching this video, listening to this episode of the podcast because you want to learn how to do music production. You got the bug, you got the itch, and now you're trying to do it better. What would you say is the goal? What's the outcome of all this learning that you're doing? Obviously, making great sounding music is the ultimate outcome, but for a lot of people, they would have the wrong, what I would say is the wrong answer to this question, or I would say there's a better answer to this question. So for a lot of people, their goal with consuming any sort of content, reading books, watching videos, taking courses around music production, their goal would be to collect tactics. So they see a video about a cool compression trick. I've collected that. They see a video about how to EQ vocals. They collect that. They see a video about this and that. And it's very easy to do. Why? Because that's what everybody wants. I've made lots of videos with tactics, and nothing against them. We do need some tactics. But if that's all you ever do, it's like you're playing in the shallow end of the pool and you're missing out on all the goodness over in the deep end where the diving board is. That's way more fun. So the better option, rather than just collecting tactics, is to seek out mastery. That's what John Mayer's talking about in that quote. Isn't learning a new riff in the key of G major or learning how to play that riff in the A pentatonic scale. He's talking about something that transcends all of that. Yeah, he knows how to do those things, but on a much deeper sense, he has a much deeper understanding of the instrument of guitar than the average guitar player. And that leads to him being some people say one of the greatest guitar players ever. Whether you agree with that or not, the principle is sound. It's the difference between, man, I just sounded real Southern just then. I grew up in Mississippi and it comes out. I didn't try to get rid of my thick Southern accent, but it's something, anyway, I just said, it sounds. That just made me giggle. Anyway, the difference between tactics and mastery is like the difference between memorization and instinct. So John talked about developing that instinct right there at the end of the video, and that's kind of the theme of what we're talking about today. One of them is easier than the other. It's really easier to just memorize a bunch of tactics. It's more difficult to really develop an instinct for playing guitar, for songwriting, recording, mixing. But one of them works way better and gets way better results than the other, and I'm guessing you can guess as to which one that is. So if you don't do this, if you stay in the shallow land of gathering tactics, then you will most likely continue to be frustrated with the results that you're getting. Your songs, your recordings, your mixes, they'll fall flat. You won't make much progress because tactics without a deeper strategy, without a deeper instinct for what you're trying to achieve, won't get you very far. In the same way, if you do come along with me for this journey and start developing your instincts on a deeper level, what'll happen is your songwriting, your recording, your mixing, your mastering will become more effortless. It'll become more fun, and the quality of everything you touch will skyrocket. I know that's a big claim. Sounds like I'm making it up. I promise this is the way forward. I've experienced it myself. I have clients who've experienced this. I just this morning listened to an EP released by one of my private clients, and I was sitting over there in that chair just listening, big smile on my face like a proud papa because he just made something that sounds incredible. Anyway, this is absolutely possible for you, but I want you to think in terms of you're not abandoning tactics altogether. We got to know where to put the EQ, where to move the compressor. Yeah. But without the other piece, you're going to be kind of just over here spinning your wheels in tactic land. Okay? All right. So, by the way, this video comes out right before the next speed mixing challenge begins. If you want to level up your mixes and finish more music that you're proud of in less time than you thought possible, come join the next speed mixing challenge. There should be a link below in the description, or you can go to speedmixingchallenge.com to grab your ticket. Okay, so I want to break this up, this idea of developing our instincts in the studio, break it up into 4 sections or 4 phases of the music production process. And then we'll talk about how to apply this principle in each of those phases. By the way, you can start applying this today and start seeing results today. This isn't the kind of thing that you're going to have to work on for the next 6 to 12 months before you see any results. It'll be instant. And of course, it's also a lifelong journey of mastery, but you can see some big results instantly. So as we go through these 4 phases, I'm going to ask a question with each phase, a good question for you to ask yourself as you're trying to develop your own instincts in that phase. And then I'm going to give you a way to practice what we talk about and how to get better at that thing. Okay, so there'll be a question and then there'll be a practical application, a practice thing for you to do. Cool? All right, let's jump in. First, let's talk about songwriting. For a long, long time on this channel, I didn't talk about songwriting almost at all. Although most of the people who come to me to learn music production are writing their own songs, to the point where I just last year or a year before, I put out a home studio songwriting course where I laid out my songwriting process because people kept asking me for it. So it makes sense that we talk about it here. Even though we love talking about music production, it all begins with the song, right? So here's the question related to songwriting. What makes a song good or bad to you? There's so much of what we do that is that is subjective. And everything we talk about today will be subjective. That's why I can't tell you what your instincts should be. I can't really even tell you what's good and what's bad when it comes to songs, because what I think might be an amazing song, you might just not prefer, and you might prefer something that I personally don't like. So I'm not gonna hem and haw the whole video and put everything inside of disclaimers, but you do need to be able to answer the question, what makes a song good or bad to you? So what is it about a song's lyrics that connects with you and you say, man, those are some powerful lyrics, or man, those lyrics connect with me? What is it about a song's melody that makes you connect with it? When you think of your favorite songs, what's going on with the chord progression that makes you feel connected to that song? It doesn't have to be super complicated. Unless you're like a big Rush fan and you love all the complicated stuff that they do, or maybe you like Don't Stop Believin', and it's just 4 chords mostly for the life, and it's an amazing song. Either way, the specific song does not matter. What matters is you do a little deeper thinking about what is it about these songs that connects with you, that you would say, this song is great, and here's why. Can I tell you a secret as I take a sip of my coffee? Lukewarm black coffee, it doesn't get any worse than that. I make it, and then I sit it here, and then I get busy, and then I go back, and it's gotten cold. I know they make mugs. Don't they make mugs that are like Bluetooth? They're not Bluetooth. That doesn't make sense. But they keep the coffee warm. They also make thermoses. I know. Anyway, sorry. Can I share a secret with you? I've been running this channel since 2009. April 2009, I uploaded my first video. I was a baby back then. I had a lot more hair back then. I just lost my hat. But one of the things that's true for me as a musician, songwriter, music producer, mix engineer, all of the above, everything I do creatively when it comes to making music, I've gotten better over the last 16 years because I've been talking about it and teaching it here. Now, you might hear that first and say, hold on, you didn't know how to do it and you were teaching it? No, but I was at a certain level 16 years ago. I am at a much higher level now, and I'm continuing. I'm going to keep going. Why not? But one of the core reasons I've been able to improve is because doing a weekly YouTube video, teaching this stuff, forces me to think deeper about it than the average person, right? When you're learning this stuff, you get the idea, you get the concept, and then you're off to the races. One thing to help you develop mastery and really help you develop your instinct for what makes a good song is to think about it more deeply and even almost pretend like you're going to teach a class on the thing you're talking about. So big picture songwriting. If you are a songwriter and I said, hey, I got a live stream coming up. I'm down sick with pneumonia. Can you please come on and teach a class on songwriting? What would you teach? I'm not saying you have to develop a full curriculum or even develop a talk, but it'd be give yourself 30 minutes to come up with an outline of like, what in the world would you talk about? Where would you start? How would you end? Like, what would be the main points? What's the most important thing you could teach me about songwriting if I only gave you 30 minutes and we're sitting down for coffee and mine's gotten cold and you're teaching me songwriting? What would you teach me? What would you tell me? There is power in thinking deeper and in teaching someone else how to do something. Honestly, I think everyone should start a YouTube channel and teach what they're learning, if for no other reason than it helps you learn it better and makes you better. But then also it may turn into a business and you may make your living from it like I did, which is also awesome, by the way. That's a topic for another day. But if nothing else, just pretend for an hour that you've got to teach a class on X. Let's say it's songwriting. What would you teach about? In just doing that exercise, you'll start to further develop your own instincts about songwriting so you can better recognize a great song when it comes across your desk or when it comes out of your mouth or when you're sitting there playing. You'll think, that's a great line. That's a great song. And it won't be so like one-to-one to where you'll come up with a line for a song. You'll say, oh, yeah, I love that because that's similar to what they did in Hotel California or whatever. It's not that clean, but it's more the idea of you absorb what makes a good song and you get to where you can at least express, if you have a list of your top 10 favorite songs, why each one of them is on the list and give some tangible reason other than, oh, I just like it. Like, what is it that you like? Oh, turns out I like the chord progression, I like the rhyme scheme, and the melody on the chorus is really cool to me. Stuff like that. I'm not talking about getting super, super crazy deep and spending 8 hours tearing a single song apart, but you should be able to verbalize what it is you like about it. Why does that matter? Because if you can't verbalize it, then you can't go and reproduce it yourself. Back to the John Mayer clip. You might be sitting there thinking, Joe, what in the world does any of this have to do with what you showed us, the John Mayer clip? He talked about coming up with a guitar part by humming it first before you play it. Same idea here. If I can't verbalize with my mouth what it is I like about a great song, then I haven't really nailed down what makes a song great to me in my brain. And guess what? I use that same brain for writing songs and coming up with chord progressions. If I've not exercised that piece of it and thought about it deeply enough, I'm going to be stuck with kind of the same old chord progressions I've always used, same old melodies, same old lyrics. That's not great. Okay, so what's the practice? What's a way to actually practically do this? How can we absorb songs into our brains and have them come back out in interesting ways when we sit down to write a song? It's actually very simple. Play great songs. Not listen to great songs, although that's important. Actually learn how to play and sing those songs. That may seem super obvious, but I just recently, I've gotten into, I think I've mentioned this in recent episodes, been on a big Jeff Buckley kick, and his songs, at least the ones on Grace, none of them, most of them, have complicated chord progressions that I can't just listen and say, oh, that's a G, E minor, C, and D. Hallelujah does go just G, E minor, C, and D. But for the most part, either the songs in whole or in part have sections that I can't just hear and say, oh, I know what he's playing. He's playing stuff I'm not used to playing, stuff that's got like B flats in it and G minors in it, stuff that I'm not used to playing. And I've been learning some of them just kind of casually because it's fun to me, and it's unlocking all kinds of things for me musically. So that's the whole point. It's one thing to listen to a song. It's one thing to know a song by heart I could sing along with it at a karaoke bar. It's another thing entirely to actually play and perform the song. Pick your favorite song. I bet you, if you're like me, this may not be true for everybody, especially if you're in like a cover band and you do a lot of playing covers. I don't do that a lot, so I end up not learning a lot of these songs. If you made a list of your top 10 favorite songs, I bet if 10 people made that list, I would guess that 8 of them could not play those songs or had never actually played them themselves. That's a huge opportunity for you. Learn how to play them. Memorize the songs, memorize the lyrics, and in doing so, all that just gets put up in here in your brain, and it starts to mix around with all your current ideas, and your current ideas are going to be better because of it. It helps you internalize what you've already determined to be great songs. Now you might think, Joe, can you give me like a list of the top 50 best songs of all time? No. Because that would be my top 50. You need your top 50 or your top 10, your top 5. That's what matters most. What connects with you? Who cares what connects with everybody else? What connects with you? And maybe throw in like a popular song occasionally. Don't go so weird that nobody wants to listen to your music because your stuff's so obscure. But then again, you might be able to find an audience for that obscure stuff. So either way, make this a part of your regular practice routine, and I think you'll find your songwriting sessions get a lot easier. Second thing to do that I recommend is subscribe to my friends over at Songtown. Songtown USA is their handle on YouTube. It's Clay Mills, Marty Dotson. I had coffee with Clay recently. I did a review of one of their videos a few months back, and then Clay reached out. We're both in Nashville. We sat down for coffee. He's a lovely guy. Guess what? We're both from Mississippi. He retained his southern accent a little better than I did, but mine still comes out here occasionally from time to time. Now I sound like a cowboy. That doesn't even make sense. Go subscribe to them. They are two pro songwriters here in the Nashville area. Lots of great videos there. They've got a membership that's super cool too if you're wanting to get into songwriting and like writing for publishing and things like that. But what's kind of the net result here? If you start to learn how to internalize these songs, you'll take yourself from feeling stuck in a rut from a songwriting standpoint where you're writing the same thing over and over, and you'll really unlock all new possibilities and combinations. Because all we do as creative people is we take the raw materials in our lives and in our brains and we kind of reconfigure it into something new and exciting. That's all songwriting is. You're not making up new words in your songs. You're using existing words and rewriting them in a unique way. Same thing with notes and chords and melodies. But having better and more raw material up here will help it kind of ooze out of you a little bit better. I got to stop using terms like ooze. That's just gross. All right, that is the first phase I want to talk about, songwriting. Let's jump into the second phase, which I would call recording. So how do we develop our recording instincts? The question that I would ask you when it comes to recording is, what to you makes a good tone? If you were to record something and with a microphone and listen back to it on your speakers, would you be able to say, hey, that sounds great? Would you be able to identify, that's some great tone? Or are you kind of like, I don't know, I guess, I'm not sure. If you're in the second category, this is a place where you could really upgrade everything that you do by intentionally becoming better versed in what makes good tone. So what's a good practice for this? How do we learn what good tone sounds like? Got great news for you. My phone's over there, but if you've got a cell phone in your pocket, an iPhone, for example, with access to Spotify or Apple Music, you got access to all the tone you could ever want access to. So my advice would be give yourself regular, like blocks on your calendar even, to do critical listening, where you are listening to music in a critical sense. You're listening to not just to enjoy the song, but to understand what's happening. What's happening with the drums. Like, it may be the kind of thing you listen to the same song 5 times. The first time you're listening to the drums. The second time you're listening to the bass and the general low end of the mix. The third time you're listening to all the rhythm instruments like guitars. The fourth time you're listening to any lead instruments or any kind of more bright stuff in the mix. And then the fifth time you're listening to the vocals and what they're doing. Doing that exercise, that might seem like a lot, or maybe you listen to all five of those different things over the course of listening through to the song once. Just doing that will give you all kinds of, it's not going to be mind-blowing. You're not going to go listen to a Toto song, Africa, and your mind's going to be blown forever and everything changes. But you will have moments when you listen to stuff, even stuff that you've listened to your entire life, that you've maybe never listened to critically. You'll listen and you'll say, oh, interesting. Oh, interesting. I find myself literally doing that. I go, oh, that's interesting. We'll be riding in the car, listening to something, and I'll go, oh, interesting. And Pam will go, what? I'm like, no, it's just a music thing. Or I'll tell her, and she'll be like, that is interesting, but now I just want to listen to the song. Stop ruining it for me. If you do this regularly, and you'll get to a point where you just do it automatically. Like when I put in my earbuds to listen, but it's gotten to the point where it's hard for me to just listen to music and enjoy it because I'm generally picking it apart. Not in a critical sense of like, oh, you did this wrong, but more in just a curiosity sense of I want to know like, okay, what are the drums doing? What's that bass tone? What kind of guitar tones we rocking? How's that acoustic sound? How's that vocal tone? What's going on with the background vocals? This is such good raw material to be feeding into your brain to help you develop your own instincts. Because you may listen to one thing and say, I don't like that guitar tone. I don't like what's going on with that guitar. Just not my thing. That's good information. You might listen to this and say, boy, I love the sound of that snare drum. I want to try to get that kind of sound next time I have a song with drums. And you start to kind of file these things away. You don't have to like formalize this. You don't have to like keep a document where it's just all getting in here. Same with the songwriting, so that it kind of influences everything that you do in the studio because it's all happening up there in the brain. So that's the first practical application to this. You want to get better at recording, listen critically and try to guess what they did in the recording phase to get it to sound that way. Where do they place the microphones? What guitar is that a Telecaster? Is that a Stratocaster? Is that a Les Paul? You don't have to know. You don't have to actually get the answer right. But just thinking through this critically is going to help you think through critically next time you sit down to record. And that leads us to our second practice tip is you just need to record a lot. If you find yourself recording and the whole goal of the recording session is to get done as quickly as possible so you can get to the mixing part, the quote-unquote fun part, you're going to have hard time because recording is where it's at. Recording is where all the magic occurs. Mixing can enhance the magic, but mixing can't create magic. Magic has to happen when musicians have instruments in their hands and are making music. So what happens if you don't get this piece right? Then you'll generally, if you're not happy with your recordings now, that won't change. If you feel like all the stuff you record is kind of mediocre, it'll continue to be mediocre. And worse, you'll spend countless hours trying to figure out how to fix what you recorded in the mix. And we talked about this recently. You just can't. Fixing it in the mix is a myth. We can do light fixes in the mix. We can buff out a little bit of a little dent in the bumper. We can't overhaul your totaled vehicle in the mix. And if you're recording stuff that when you hit play on the raw recording, it doesn't go, ooh, it doesn't make you like excited and you're like, oh, that's terrible. It's going to continue to be terrible and you will never solve that problem. On the other hand, if you start to develop an instinct for what a good recording sounds like, specifically good recording sounds like to you, and if you develop the habit of not moving on from the recording phase until you've achieved it, until you've achieved something that sounds great in its raw form, man, if there's nothing else from this video or anything else I've ever taught you sinks in and you apply it to your life, but it'll change your life. Because you will then level up your mixes forever. Your mastering will be even easier because you got this piece right. So we've talked about how to develop your songwriting instincts. We've talked about how to develop your recording instincts. Let's talk about how to develop your production instincts. To me, the line is blurry between recording and production. For me, recording is about the tone and production is about the part. So the question we would ask ourselves here is, what's a good part to you? In other words, it's time to record that electric guitar. What part are you going to play? Do you know what a good part sounds like? Are you well versed in what good parts sound like? This is really specifically, like literally what John Mayer was talking about in that clip that I played. He's saying you're about to play something, and your default mode, if you're a guitar player, you get this, would be to grab a guitar and to start doing those same riffs you always do, those same little shapes that feel comfortable, those same kind of, I've got this, this is a riff that I do all the time, like that. I do it all the time. I'm doing it with my hands right now. It's on the G string and the B string for the most part. That's it. It's fun. I enjoy it. But if you say, okay, we need the guitar part, I'm going like that's just where my hand, like, stop it. My hand just goes there by default. And if we let our hands lead the part, then they're going to stick to where they're comfortable. The things that I've rehearsed over and over, I'm going to stay in those lanes, and that's going to limit what I do. He's saying, why not come up with a part first before you grab the guitar? That's what he means by hum a part first. I want to say I heard, was it Eddie Van Halen used to sing he would compose his solos vocally and then go figure out how to play them on the guitar. It's the same idea. What if we focused on making the best melody, not whatever part we can technically play right now? This alone is brilliant, because instead of staying in this little box of what you're able to do, you'll push yourself out of that box. For example, the latest single from Stare Down, a song called Irrelevant. The solo on that is pretty simple, but it's in a key, I guess it's in technically like C, but the C goes to an A major, and I'm just not used. That's a weird spot I'm not super comfortable with. But what we did was we figured out what the melody was going to be, kind of in the room collaboratively together, and then I kind of figured out where that melody makes sense on the neck, because there's lots of different places you can play the same melody, right? And it turned out kind of cool. And so I didn't do it as well. We didn't completely write the part before I sat down to record it. That would have been pretty cool. But even just if you just insert a little bit of this practice into what you do, it's going to make your music better. Because a well-recorded guitar part, that technically the tone of the guitar is good, that's a good first step. But if the part is boring, or you have a whole bunch of the same thing, it's a bunch of guitars playing the same guitar part, the same power chords over and over, no matter how well you record it, we out here in the audience are going to get a little bored with it. So how can we come up with parts that are interesting? And those can all happen right here inside our brain and with our mouth. And then you can kind of transpose that onto whatever instrument you're trying to play. Super, super interesting concept. And another way of applying this is I need to come up with a keyboard part. Maybe I find the melody on guitar first and then transpose it, or I find it on keyboard and then I play it on guitar, or whatever the instrument might be. Like, put yourself in a different mode musically and see what comes out of it. I have one suggestion for how to practice this skill, and it's simply this: reject your first idea. When you're sitting down, like, what should this guitar part be? The first thing you come up with, it might very well be amazing, and it might be the right one for the song, but go ahead and just reject it. You can always come back to it later, but at least give yourself another option. So what about this? Okay, that's cool. What else? It forces you to think differently about the piece and not just rely on your gut instinct, but to say, okay, that was cool, but what if we tried something different? So reject your first idea. Give yourself a couple of different ideas before you commit. I do that with like these videos that I make. I come up with 5 to 10 titles, and typically the very first title I come up with, I think, that's great, let's do that. But generally, as I kind of mess with it a little bit more, something later on becomes the title that actually is the best title for the video. It's the same with writing lyrics. It's the same with coming up with parts. The first one might be the best, but you won't know unless you give yourself a couple of extra ones to try. All right, so if you refuse to do this, if you choose that, I don't really care about this whole coming up with parts thing, Joe, more power to you. But you're probably going to continue having kind of the same old predictable, boring parts. And if you're wondering, like, man, why I can't seem to get this to the next level, that could very well be it. However, if you embrace this concept, it's similar to what we talked about earlier with songwriting or even recording. You're going to unlock new and exciting combinations of what your parts could be, and it will open up all kinds of endless creativity that could serve your songs well. And by the way, the parts don't have to be complicated. I showed you a couple of weeks ago in this new song by my band, we added this final high guitar part that's literally just 2 notes. It was just E and A, and then it slides up to play a triad, like not even a triad, just 2 other notes. That's it. That was it. That was the part. Was it hard to play? Nope. Did it pull the song together? You betcha. It was the right part. I played it well, had a good tone. All these pieces came together. But when I say a good part, I don't mean now you have to be a John Mayer level guitarist and come up with super complicated stuff. Obviously, if you think of a part that goes meedly-doodly-doodly-doo and you can't play meedly-doodly-doodly-doodly-doo, then that's probably not the right part for you, right? So we're gonna have to. We got to use some common sense here, but just because you're being more intentional about the melodies doesn't mean they have to be incredibly complicated and you have to become a virtuoso to play them. But at the same time, coming up with a melody that's outside of what you would normally play will actually push you as a guitar player, for example, to learn how to play melodies that aren't in those same familiar, comfortable shapes, and that's going to make you better as a result. Okay, the final phase, we talked about songwriting, recording, producing. Let's talk about mixing and mastering. I'm lumping those two together. How do we develop our mixing and mastering instincts? The question here is really simple. What sound are you going for? If I came over to your house, and I've done this with private clients, by the way, where I've come to their house, I've gone all over the country, to their house, sit in their room. And if I say, and sometimes I'll do this, I'll say, okay, just work on this mix. Go. I'm just watching. And it's fun to watch because they'll if I'm like over here, they'll pull up an EQ on like a vocal track, and then they'll look over at me, and I'll just sit there and smile. And then they'll start like moving an EQ around, and they'll look over at me like kind of like a little kid who's like doing something for the first time. I'm not making fun. Honestly, I'm putting them on the spot to kind of prove a point. But what happens is I'll say something like, what sound are you going for? Or what do you hear? Or what problem do you hear that you're trying to solve? And they'll say, I don't know. That is very normal, but that is something that if you can get to a point where you no longer say, I don't know, to what sound are you going for or what problem do you hear, your mixes are just going to go through the roof. And some people might say, well, I don't know what I'm trying to do here, but I'll know it when I get there. Have you ever, I guess to that I would ask, have you ever gotten there? Or have you just, like, I got an EQ on here, I'm not sure what I'm trying to do, but I'll know it when I get there. Maybe. It'd be much better to know what you're trying to do before you do it. What do you hear? Can you describe what you hear? Can you describe what it is about the sound that you don't like so that you can then choose the right tool to go fix it? If not, that's where I would have you hang out. Another option is you want to learn more tactics to fix whatever's going on in your mix. You don't even know what tactic to learn if you don't know what the problem is currently. So what's the takeaway here? What's the practical application for developing better mixing and mastering instincts so that you can sit and that you can listen and you can learn and you can know what you're trying to accomplish and what the problem is you're trying to solve? The first step, again, is critical listening. You got to know what a good mix sounds like so you can recognize the ways that your mix does not live up to a good mix, right? And then secondly is just reps. You got to put in the repetitions. You got to get in there and not just work on, but finish a whole bunch of mixes. That's the only way you're going to get better at this. If you don't choose to get better at this piece of the puzzle, you'll be in that mode of just spinning your wheels in your mixes. You might put in a bunch of reps, but you're not going to make much progress because you're sitting there just kind of randomly guessing as to what to do next. The flip side, of course, is you enter into this mode where you're constantly evolving, you're achieving new heights as a mix engineer, and new levels of you finish a mix and you say, dang, that was, like, I surprised myself that sounds so good. I had one of those recently, the newest song with the band, last week's video. I sent it to them and they're like, I don't know what you did, but holy crap, we were excited after recording day. We thought it couldn't get any better, and you've made it better. Like I'm just telling you that because I surprised myself. But this is what happens when you learn how to develop a mixing instinct, and then you put in a bunch of reps. Speaking of reps, not all reps are created equal. Come to my next speed mixing challenge, and you'll learn my mixing process, and you'll unlock what's been missing from your mixes. And I would recommend springing for the upgraded Premier Pass. That gives you a chance to get one-on-one coaching from me during the week. Here's the thing. Do not buy a ticket if you're not ready to dive in and transform your mixes. It'll require work from you. There's homework to do, but you will absolutely transform your mixes and your music forever as a result. Come join us. It's a whole lot of fun. Go to speedmixingchallenge.com. Link in the description. So we've come on a long journey here today. Thanks for sticking with me till the end. Is all this stuff we've talked about, is it worth focusing on? You might say, that sounds good, Joe, but that sounds like a lot of work. I just want to make music. I understand. If you want to get to a point where whenever you come to your studio to sit down to work on music, the stuff that happens blows you away, gives you goosebumps, impresses your friends and fans and associates, then you've got to develop these instincts. You've got to develop better songwriting, recording, production, mixing, and mastering instincts. And that will inform everything that you do. And it becomes progressively more effortless if you do that. Meaning, it's not difficult to get a great recording. It's not difficult to get a great mix. It doesn't take a long time because you know what you're looking for and you know how to get there. So then it's just a matter of doing it. This kind of work, working on this instinct piece, this deeper level piece versus just memorizing tactics and watching another tutorial, this will take you further than any tutorial ever could. And this is coming from a guy who's made his living making tutorials. I think tutorials have their place for sure. But if you really want to level things up, that's what the Speed Mixing Challenge is about. We're diving into the deeper concepts of how to think about mixing so that you almost see it differently. It's almost like in the Matrix. You thought you were seeing things one way, but once you develop a new way of looking at the world, you see it completely differently. And instead of being an overwhelming thing that you stare at and say, I don't know what to do, there's so many tracks staring at me, you say, all right, first I'm going to deal with this. Okay, cool. Next I'm going to deal with that. I'm going to use this tool to deal with that problem. Okay, cool. Next I'm going to deal with this. And that becomes your mixing process. It becomes a very matter-of-fact, but still fun and creative process rather than this kind of where you feel like you're just sitting down for 2 hours randomly doing stuff on the screen, hoping for the best. That's not fun. No wonder you're not enjoying the process because that process isn't fun. If that's how it was, I would have quit a long time ago. But I've gotten to a point where I have a process, I have a system. That's what I'm showing you inside the Speed Mixing Challenge. That's what you can develop for yourself, and you can enjoy a lifetime of creating ever improving and ever increasing body of work that isn't a slog every time you sit down to do it. It's fun. It's engaging, it's life-giving, and it opens up all kinds of opportunities for you that you never thought were possible back when you were stuck making the same old kind of mediocre stuff over and over again. That's what I want for you. That's why Home Studio Corner exists. That's why I do what I do. This is like what I feel like is my life calling to help you do that. So I hope this video has gotten you a step closer. Would love for you to come join me on the Speed Mixing Challenge. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe. My name's Joe Gilder. I'll see you next week.